Welcome to Ask SME Anything. Your chance to ask the ITProTV subject matter experts questions live. Here's your host, Don Pizzette.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Ask Me Anything, the show brought to you by ITProTV, where you get a chance to ask our subject matter experts all the questions that come up during your studies, your work week, just your regular IT life, because gosh darn it, nothing ever works the way it's supposed to. And so that's what we're here for, is to help you guys get answers to those questions. And in today's episode, we have Cherokee Booth in the studio with us. I'm talking about myself in the plural. I don't know why. So thank you for joining us, Cherokee.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Don. I'm super excited. My first Asks Me Anything. So.
Yeah, and one of the things that we put out for everybody asking questions was that some of your areas of expertise are Windows Desktop, Windows Server. Why don't you sum it up for us? Like, what are your areas of expertise?
So I definitely think it's Microsoft-centric and looking at both the client side and the server side. So, not that I won't deviate from that. Networking, cloud, security, the usual stuff there. But I don't know, not any kind of fringe OSs, Linux. That might be. So you can help me out with that kind of.
So it's okay that we have like
questions.
5 JavaScript and PHP questions for you today.
Oh,
so
it's going to be a short show, Don.
All right. Well, we do actually have a collection of questions, each of which have come to us from various sources. So I want to remind you guys out there, the viewers, if you have any questions for our experts over here, please let us know. And the best way to do that is via our Twitter channel. If you jump over onto Twitter and post a tweet, you can tweeterate.
Tweet us.
And make sure you throw on there hashtag AsksMeAnything. That's SME, like subject matter expert. Asks Me Anything. Tweet it there. And remember, if you're an ITProTV subscriber, you can also send us questions through the Q&A forums. We prioritize those. We make sure that those get answered first. But we try to get to everybody if we can and ask or answer questions, because that's what we like to do. And instead of beating around the bush, why don't we jump over to our first question for today? This is one that came at us from Twitter. And the question is, it seems like my Windows 10 PC is always updating. Any tips on how to manage these? And Cherokee, I can vouch for this one myself. I feel like every time I go to shut down, my machine says, hey, there's updates. Do you want to install them right now? Or every time I'm away from my computer for a day and I come in and I go to log in, it's immediately saying, hold on while applying updates. It seems like it's an incessant thing. How can we manage that?
It pretty much is incessant, Don, and you thought it was bad back in the day, but we've only seen this, and I won't say it's a problem. It's actually a good thing that we're maintaining and keeping our operating system up to date. But there's a lot behind it, like the reason as to why we see them more so now than we have before. And that's just because of the way things are changing and evolving. So Microsoft has, in order to continue to stay relevant and in the game and, just kind of in their space, they need to evolve and they can't be stagnant either. So when we look at things like operating system lifetimes, like XP, how many years running was XP? It was a pretty good while, right?
Absolutely. It was at least 12 years, right?
Yeah.
It was a long run.
I think that was the longest, operating system client side we're looking at, and then we kind of saw a reduction in the duration of those releases, and now we're at a release cadence of every 6 months. So we're talking super fast, usually, spring and fall. So when you look at the versions there, it'll be like the year and month. So usually like you see 1703, 1709, we just had our 1803. So those are going to be kind of our bigger feature updates. And then we have, just like we did in the past, anytime you have a serious security vulnerability or flaw, we'll have those hot fixes. So it's a lot, Don.
Well, so, you've got the feature updates that are about every 6 months. And when you say like 1703, that's like 17 means 2017 and 03 means March, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So those are just twice a year. That's not so bad.
Right.
The big security updates that used to be what we call Patch Tuesday, right? So that's once a month. Mm-hmm. That's not so bad, right? 12 times a year. But I know for a fact that there are times where I'm seeing updates in the middle of the week. Definitely not on a Tuesday.
I know.
So we have these. What are those called? The accelerated fixes. Ones that they roll out that are kind of emergencies. Is that what's going on?
Yeah. Let me see if I can bring up my screen for a second and draw. This is going to be scary, Don.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Picture
Let's
pages
see.
with Cherokee.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So let me just kind of put it in this way. It might help explain kind of what we're looking at here. They kind of share this information in like a cone format. And this little portion right here is where, the engineers, like the engineer builds for an operating system lie. And you're like, what does this have to do with everything? But maybe it'll help understand why we see so many. And then we'll look at how we can, what was the question, manage those? There might be a couple different ways that I could interpret that also. So we'll take a look at the literal sense and then kind of look at it from a studying perspective, if that makes sense. So the engineer builds are going to be the developers and testing. So this is like kind of where that idea comes to fruition. And then Microsoft has like 25,000 volunteer employees. I think it's called their elite program. So we'll just do another E, maybe an EL. Sorry, Don, my skills here are lacking. And they do like an in-house testing before they actually roll it out to like our insider preview. So we'll just say IP for that. Definitely not correct acronyms here. I'm just making these up. And then that's when you have your current branch and then your current branch for business. So ultimately, and I don't know what I'm doing here. Current branch for business. That looks like a mess, but hopefully that gives some kind of perspective as to why we see so many updates, because this like portion here, they're really only supporting that for 18 months, that window. So we're kind of forced to continue to evolve with these versions. We can't just stay in an older version and defer those updates. Well, we can't prevent those updates. We can defer them. So let me just close out of here and show you where you could do that. So under my settings menu here, I'm just going to go ahead and full screen this. There's a section here, if you guys can see that, Windows, it's going to be our update and security. I can zoom in a little bit there. So we'll go ahead and launch that. And I don't even want to hit this. Like, I'm nervous to check for updates because
they'll be there because there's always updates waiting. It's like some kind of predator stalking you.
Yes, we won't do that right now, Don. But there are a few things that we can do here to defer those updates. So let's take a look at that. Now, for the most short term would be changing your active hours. So we're looking here, active hours, meaning when is Cherokee productive? Well, hopefully, Dawn, you can agree, 8 to 5 p.m. Maybe not all of those. If you ask Joe, what with the project management and ideal work days, what about 50% of that time? But anyways, we don't want to be bothered. So you can change those. This is just the average default time there. So basically, when you're setting your active work hours, it's saying that the operating system won't automatically restart it during those predetermined times. So that's one way you could help maintain productivity.
Yeah, and for a work computer, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. would work out really well. If it was a home computer, you might even want to flip that and say, hey, I'm at work during the day, so reboot away. And when I get home at 5 p.m., I need that computer working. So just adjust it to your schedule.
Yeah, and that's, like I said, it's kind of something you can do for daily and looking at it at that level. But if you wanted to look at the bigger picture here, let's go into advanced options. Oops, I wasn't sharing. Let me go back so you guys can see where I clicked on that. Right here under advanced options. Just going through and combing through the individual settings. So let's see here. This is a kind of a cool one. Let me zoom in again. Automatically download updates even over metered data connections. So by default, this is set to off. Now, if you wanted to get sly here, you could go back under let's see, that's going to be under your network settings. And what you can do is set, like, for instance, if you had your home network and you didn't want to go ahead and have those updates kind of stealing the bandwidth or having you pay for them. I know this is horrible, but anyways, you could set your right here when you look at those individual connections as either a metered connection on or off. So you could kind of dictate with which network you would have those updates being pulled down. One thing.
It is pretty handy if you maybe have limited bandwidth at home, but
Right.
you go to work, or you go to a library or somewhere where you don't have limited bandwidth, and so you could choose to download updates there. I've seen people use this to trick the system so that they never took updates. They just said, that's it, I don't want updates anymore, and they do that. That's generally a bad idea, right? We don't want to disable updates because that's when we become vulnerable.
Right. I mean, that's the whole point. Like, we're continuing to evolve to become better. It's a cat and mouse game with security out there. So if we're not being proactive and fighting against that, then you're just kind of setting yourself up for failure. I know it's annoying, but you just kind of, it's part of the game, right? So yeah. All right. Automatically download updates even over the metered connections. We looked at that, showing a reminder. I'm trying to get to the main thing here. So this is kind of a big one. And I do this a lot, especially for my virtual machines. And like when we're shooting shows, even, it's kind of annoying right in the middle of something when you have that update kick off, or like right before a show when you boot that machine up. So what you can do is actually defer this update for 35 days, up to 35 days here. So it's just a little toggle switch right here under your settings UI, and now we're good to go.
All right, so we've got a couple of different options there as far as if we want to manage it. In the enterprise space, if we really wanted to go crazy, we could manage it even more using like it's not Windows Server Update Services anymore, right?
The
did it change names?
US.
I think it's now just called Update Services. It's like a feature, a role built into Windows Server 2019. Because God forbid they leave something named the same between two versions.
Jeez.
But in the enterprise space, you do have a couple of options like System Center Configuration Manager or the old Windows Server Update Services. And with those, you can get very granular and control exactly what update.
Choose one.
From the tweet, we don't necessarily have enough background here to know, is this an enterprise person or a home person?
True.
From a home perspective or an individual machine, all the options you showed work great. For the more advanced stuff,
Adam has like 190 hours on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely more than we could tackle on a quick Ask Me Anything. If you're interested in learning about System Center Configuration Manager, check it out in the ITProTV library. It is in there. Like I said, Adam Gordon filmed that, did a phenomenal job.
Right.
It's a lot. It's like 90 hours of content. There's a ton on all the different things you can do with that. Managing updates is just one piece of that solution. So in an enterprise space, you definitely want to learn about
And, and also from a studies perspective, your mind went to enterprise, and I don't even know, I totally forgot about that. But I was thinking also for someone who's studying, because exams, the objectives for the exams, this is something that I often struggle with, because I want to make sure that I'm sharing the most up-to-date information. So I don't know, let me, if I can share my screen again here. Let's just say if I was looking to study for an exam, like the one I'm shooting now here for 7698, I love how it always gives me the calculator first. So, yep. All right. So if we look at the objectives, because of these constant updates and changes, we're looking at like feature changes, all sorts of different options that we have available to us. If you look at this skills measured portion, so this is right above where they itemize and list the objectives. They usually put the date. Where is it? Let me scroll down right here. So it'll say a little tiny note here. These exam updates are effective since November 30th of 2017. So when you're studying, and I don't know if that was part of the question either, but it's always good to check that frequently so that you're studying the right material.
Yeah, and some of them, like this one, it's been 6 months since it's changed, so that's not a big deal. But like the Azure exams, those things are changing every couple of weeks. It's definitely something to stay on top of. All right, well, Cherokee, let's move on to our next question. This one is a little bit more general here, just asking about what is the Windows Admin Center, which is one of the newer features in the Windows operating system. So tell us a little bit about the Admin Center.
Windows Admin Center is pretty cool, actually. I have it installed on my computer, but I don't have any servers on it. I need a virtual machine for that. Let me see if I can pull one up here. I have just a little lab environment. Let me go ahead and log in here. All right, we should be good. Windows Admin Center is cool because it takes something that not something, but a lot of some things, like a plethora of different tools, administrative tools, event viewer. We have different things like task manager, all sorts of things, different types of management tools, and combines them into one. So we're looking at server side now. Let's go ahead and pull that up to show you instead of having me talk about this. If I can type. All right, Admin Center. Now, this is actually going to be based off of here. We're looking at HTTPS, and it's going to be using port 6519. Just want to make sure that's correct, and you guys can see that here. Give it a second, it'll pull up. I only have one server on my network here, so that's what we're looking at for this demo DC. Let me zoom in a little bit. But if you click on, I keep saying that, but I don't have a zoom it tool on this machine. We'll go with the Windows magnifier. There we go. You go ahead and click on your actual server that you want to manage, and you can add a lot of servers in here. I don't even know if there's a limit, to be honest. All right.
Now, Cherokee, while you're loading that, is this related to the Microsoft Honolulu or Project Honolulu?
Yeah, actually, so that was the code name Project Honolulu, and it's kind of evolved since that. And so this is going to be, I guess, the ultimate, and I'm having a hard time pulling it up. Maybe we'll come back to this. But anyways, okay, it's connecting now. There we go. It's just everything in one. So I can see this being the default administrative tool in the future. And currently, it's not slated to it's not a replacement for all different management tools. So we see things like RSAT is still viable. Our MMCs are still viable because things like Active Directory, DHCP, DNS MMCs, IIS, those are just a few things that are not encompassed with this particular tool. But just looking at this slew on the left-hand side, this pane over here, I mean, remote desktop, there's actually even a direct PowerShell portion here. It's so cool. So with PowerShell, you can do just about anything. I mean, I can't think of an exception right off the top of my head. So I almost want to say it's going to be like all-encompassing in the future, because this is really just the beginning that we're seeing of this tool.
Yeah, and I've heard Microsoft's making a big push behind it, because in Windows Server 2019, they said the default install is now a core services install. So when you install Windows Server 2019, there's no GUI, right? It just dumps you right to a command prompt. And for most people, if you need to manage the server, they'll load the GUI tools on their laptop. But RSAT's gotten pretty big over the years. It's a large set of tools. If you had a web page, you could just go to.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. So we're in Edge right now. So this is browser based. So that's super cool. Mm-hmm. And something else you mentioned, like even with the Hyper-V server version itself, those all can be managed here within this admin center as well. So I think they really thought about the end user and like the administrators and how to make life a little bit easier on them. Because to be honest, Dawn, I mean, I know we teach this stuff and we have to look at all these different tools and try to explain and in what situation. So you still need to understand and know the tools, but it just makes it easier to launch them and work with them.
Well, and the other aspect is the multi-platform side of it, right?
That's very cool.
If I'm on a Mac, how am I supposed to run the RSAT? Or I'm on a Linux box. So Microsoft gives you a web-based interface. You can get in there and get at it. All right, let's jump over to our next question. And just in case you're wondering, if you have a question of your own, feel free to share it with us. We are monitoring the Twitter feed live. If you post a question on Twitter using hashtag AsksMeAnything, our crack marketing team will pick that up and throw it at me here in a little chat so that we can answer it right here on the show.
I hope they throw it at you and not me.
Yeah, well, that's my whole job. I don't have to just sit here and say random comments. I'm the Ed McMahon, but I also monitor for the questions. So
okay,
the questions in there, and we'll see if we can stump Cherokee. Otherwise, we have a collection of questions that have come in from our viewers and people like you via that hashtag all throughout the week. So definitely make sure to make use of that. We certainly appreciate it. Our next question is a two-parter. We've got, I want to get into the cloud game, but I'm not really sure where to start. does Azure offer a free tier to practice with like AWS? All right, so 2 questions here. Let's start with the first part, which is I want to get into Azure or just the cloud in general. What do you think is a good starting place?
Okay, so getting into the cloud, and so understanding really what the cloud is, and the cloud is networking just on a different location. So if you really need to start with networking, you're not with cloud deployment styles and models. It just depends on how that's implemented. Sometimes it'll be, fully off-site. Sometimes it's on-prem. Sometimes it's hybrid. So having a good, solid understanding of just networking in general, CompTIA Net Plus. CompTIA also has Cloud Plus certification. I have actually taken that exam. So that one's kind of like theoretical. So if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, I would suggest choosing a platform, probably depending on whatever organization, if you have a company in mind that you're going to work for, whatever they use, you'd probably want to lean in that direction. So some of the, bigger players, Google, of course, AWS, Azure, but getting your hands dirty on some of those platforms.
Yep, and what kind of goes hand in hand with this is the second part of the question, because a lot of people they want to learn about the cloud. Amazon AWS is probably the largest cloud provider. Not probably, they are.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn it, you can jump in and get some hands-on experience. Just try it out. The whole point is that you only pay for what you use, so it should be pretty inexpensive. But a lot of people worry, and rightly so, that they could run up a pretty big bill if they're not careful. And if you're just trying to learn and experiment, that's a problem. In AWS, because I'm an AWS guy, and I know they have the free usage tier where you can spin up a handful of virtual machine instances. You can fire up virtual private clouds and things of that nature, and it doesn't cost you a dime up to a certain threshold, right? As long as you stay beneath it, it's completely free. And Amazon does that so you can learn, you can practice. Do you know if Azure has something similar?
They do. They do have a free, and let me just go ahead and see if I can pull up their site here. So as far as them charging you without permission, I'm not sure. You might want to talk to Adam about that because he does have the company card attached to his Azure account. I think you're just throttled or limited as to what you can or cannot do. I think that's going to be Azure.Microsoft. Let's just see for the portal. I don't want to try to log in anywhere because I want to click on the free account here.
To
first.
Sign up for an Azure account, you have to have a credit card attached no matter what. I don't think there's a way to get around that, but it does. Well, it says create your free
we can
today.
Let's see, start free. Okay, so this will show me kind of what I can get with that. So by default, you're getting your 12 months here. You get up to $200 in a credit, and then they have some always free services, and there's actually quite a lot here. Let's see, what can I do with my free account? This first option, it's kind of interesting how much they've tailored to developers. It's really cool if you're a developer because there's so much that you can get for free just by having that trial account. You look at things like the products that are available. You have your different types of VMs, like these little, I think these are going to be your little burstable. So the way that they charge is interesting because with these burstable VMs, you take like a baseline of the utilization of that VM, and you can actually earn up credits depending on how many bursts you have. It's kind of crazy. But if you're just looking at it from a free perspective, don't worry about that. As a matter of fact, the SLA that you see with an Azure subscription is not valid whenever you're doing the free trial. So just kind of keep that in mind because if you're expecting an immediate response or something to work right away, you're kind of put towards the bottom of the list.
Priority.
They're over those paying customers. So just kind of keep that in mind too when you're playing around. But I think you've got more than enough to really just play around in there. A lot of
And they say 750 hours, right? In a 31-day month, you have 744 hours.
Oh.
So it's enough hours so that you could spin up a VM and leave it running all month long and not have to pay a dime.
Well, good. I'm glad you're good with math there.
I fired up the calculator in the background. I cheated.
But I mean, just looking at all the different app services, it's kind of crazy. Containers free, so that's pretty cool as well. And you mentioned something earlier, Dawn, with having that kind of cross-platform or having that open-mindedness, and you do see that a lot with Microsoft nowadays. So that's actually really cool. Active Directory also, I think that this is pretty cool. You can have up to 50,000 monthly stored users and then up to 500,000 AD objects. So I don't know how, I wouldn't be able to put that many objects in AD, but have fun with it there. Yeah. Yeah, you just sign up here. I think that was the question, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
and so that's a great way to jump in and learn with little risk, right? So if you are just a regular average Joe and you want to get in and start learning on the cloud, the best way to do it is get your hands dirty. And you can sign up for a free AWS account and use the free tier. You can use the Azure free account. Google Compute Engine also has a free account. So all those are great ways to get in there and learn. Just make sure you keep track of your usage, right?
Right.
Make sure that you don't spin up a 16-core virtual machine with 200 gigs of RAM and then leave it running. If you run it for 1 hour, that's not so bad. But if you leave it running all month long, you can run up a pretty big bill.
Some of those machines charge by the second too. So you just want to be aware of that.
Yeah, the GPU ones, those are
Yeah.
those are billed pretty heavy. All right, so definitely some good advice there. And you recommended like Network Plus and the Cloud Plus from CompTIA. Microsoft specifically, I know there's a lot of Azure training, but they do expect you to have some basic Windows knowledge there as far as like PowerShell, because a lot of it's managed through PowerShell as well. So on the Microsoft side, do you have any recommended training there?
Any of the Azure shows I think would be a good, they're all a good place to start. I know Mike's done some PowerShell shows here at ITProTV, Windows 10, server shows, anything really to help strengthen your overall just experience, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. You mess around with it, and messing around with it on a test account is way better than messing around with it on a production account at the office. So definitely a good way to learn and get in there and see what's new. All right. Well, that is another great question that came at us from Twitter via hashtag AsksMeAnything. Remember, you guys are welcome to do the same. Post a tweet, a message out there, and make sure you use that hashtag. We'll see it and try and answer your questions right here during the show. All right, our next question is, it's a technicality, right? So basically they're asking about provisioning versus imaging. So is provisioning and imaging the same thing? Cherokee, we're talking about, I imagine, deploying operating systems here. So what is the difference between those two terms?
That's actually a really good question because historically, and you think about the term, just like the word provisioning, like what Webster's dictionary would say, and you think like, okay, I'm getting this new employee set up. Maybe I have to provision them a workspace, get them a chair and a desk and a computer. But when you're using it in an IT sense, you do have to think about that. So provisioning and imaging are two separate things. Images using images like .iso files. And Dawn, this kind of goes back to that earlier question we had with the Windows updates. Because if you think about those ISO images and downloading as an admin, so this is like an admin perspective because it's kind of an admin-y question, right? You download those ISOs, you have a collection of them, and you go ahead and use a particular ISO to set up a workstation. It connects to the internet, and then you're sitting there waiting how long with all those updates, right? So instead of going about it that way, with a pre-configured, like a sysprep image or something like that, why don't we just go ahead and Windows operating systems are quicker to install nowadays. So we'll go ahead and start fresh, start clean, and then create provisioning packages and put that on top. So it's kind of an easier way for deployment. You can create provisioning packages with the Windows Configuration Designer tool. Let me see if here I have it on my desktop. Let me close out of that. Yeah, we can go ahead and pull this up real quick. I think I've got it on here. So you're going to be creating, if I can type here, Configuration Designer. Oh, wait, that's the, so sorry. It's going to be, you have to install the ADK package first. Let me see if I can find that here. And it's part of that. You create .ppkg files. And so those are going to be pretty cool when it comes to, let me see if it's still under here. Nope, not my administrative tools, admin center. No, hold on. I say this. Let me just try to do a search. Sometimes the indexing.
And for people who have worked with like System Center Configuration Manager, you build it this way, where you build images as one thing, and you try and keep them fairly generic that you can roll out wherever you want. But then you have specific customizations that you deploy on top of that, which you're saying that would be more like provisioning there, right? We're rolling.
Yes, and that's why I wanted to kind of, so this tool, it used to be called, I was typing the wrong name. So when you're searching for it, Imaging and Configuration Designer, it's a little confusing because so we're talking about, it's currently called Windows Configuration Designer. So I know you were talking about how they're always changing the name. So that's what we see here also. So some people will call it Wicked. That's kind of a name for it. But yeah, so you have a provisioning package. So provisioning, you can provision all different types of devices, mobile devices, kiosk devices, desktop devices. And the default here, like if you were just going to go ahead and create one, you can stack provisioning packages. So if I have like a company default provisioning package where I have this line of business application that everyone in the company use, I could have a provisioning pack set up with like the drivers needed for that or any kind of dependencies. And then I could also stack that onto a marketing department for a provisioning package there for apps and software that only the marketing team uses. So I can really tailor my deployments. I could sit here and however many packages I would need for my company, I could create them all, right? So my work would basically be done for me. So I could go ahead and grab that fresh ISO from Microsoft, not have to go through all those updates, apply my provisioning package, and be ready to go. So we see a lot faster times. Images are still a thing. You can still use those different deployment methods, System Center, and different types of
Semantic Ghost, like a Cronus True Image, Altiris. There's a number of products out there. Those are all still valid products. But imaging, we use imaging when we don't even realize it. Like when you're just doing a regular Windows install, on that installation media is a little file called setup.wim, and it is an image of a default Windows install. So that's kind of where you start, and then you're stacking these packages on top. And to build on your example, Cherokee, we might have like a package for laptops, a package for desktops, but then we might have a package for accounting, the accounting department. So if I hire a new accountant and they're getting a laptop, they would get the base image, they would get the laptop package, and then they would get the accounting package. And that's how you'd customize that machine. Yep. And ultimately provision it, right? Yeah,
and it's really cool because they offer a lot of different, what do they call those? Configuration service providers. It's based off of that model for different settings that are available. Actually, you're going to need to look at the advanced settings because they recently changed the UI for this tool also. Imagine that. But if you go to the advanced settings, they have some really cool hidden gems, Dawn. My favorite I recently found out about is called Clean PC. And it's so cool because you can, so we're provisioning, right? But what if an employee leaves your organization and you need to turn that device around and get it set up for their replacement, but you don't want any residual files or maybe any like personally identifiable information on there. So you can run that Clean PC, and essentially it's like resetting. You can even put that .ppkg file in an operating system partition so that when you hit the reset button on that Windows device, it will scrub it, install all of your requirements, that's complying with the health of your corporate security policy or whatever. And it's like one step there. I mean, that's pretty awesome. From an administrative standpoint, think about all the different apps or the time wasted installing those apps individually, software, setting up different network resources, things like that.
And this has all evolved a lot because I remember almost 20 years ago setting up Microsoft System Management Server, SMS, back in the SMS 2.0 days. Setting up infrastructure like this was really, really challenging. It took a lot of effort. Now it's all built in. The system's ready to deploy, so it's so much easier. If you haven't worked with it, definitely be sure to check that out. Now, we're starting to run a little bit low on time, but I know we
Okay.
can get to at least one more question, so we'll reach out and tackle that one.
Okay.
Our last question of the day here is, Windows Server 2019 is coming out around the bend, right? So what features can we expect to see in Server 2019?
That's a good question. So I'm actually really excited because ITProTV is sponsoring me to go to Ignite this year, which is in September, which if Microsoft follows their release cadence, it will also be a release for that Server 19. So hopefully they'll be unveiling that. So currently, if you think back to that cone that we looked at, we're kind of in the insider preview section right now. So let me pull up, let's see if we can find a Microsoft server blog.
Yeah, and they actually started announcing Windows Server 2019 a couple of months ago, right? So it's not like a guarded secret, but we haven't seen any production builds. The production builds don't normally come out until what, like October?
Yeah, so that's what we're talking about. Like, they're still in that kind of testing mode. So not everything is set in stone. I can't give you specifics and details, but what they have done with Server 2019 is they've looked at telemetry data. They've also taken a lot of feedback because and I know I'm like probably over analyzing the release cadences here too much, like we spoke about. But if you look at 2008, and then we waited 4 years, we saw 2012, and then we see 2016. So now they're kind of like breaking that mold. And I think, I don't know, to be honest, how they're going to go in the future, but it kind of makes you wonder, like, okay, so what's going on here? But I think they're really focused on listening and providing that feedback. And you can see that here. I think they mentioned that somewhere on this page. It's kind of interesting. And this is just from their cloudblogs.microsoft.com. And they break it down. They said that they've had four big, they call them themes. So there are four themes that they want to focus on with the Server 2019 release. One is going to be hybrid cloud solutions. We've already looked at, I want to say Project Honolulu, but no, the Windows Administrative Center there. So that's going to be part of this. So really that tool was designed to work hand in hand with 2019. You see a lot of disaster recovery here. I'm trying to think what else for this one.
I know one big thing they were pushing is compatibility with Kubernetes for container deployment. So containers are a big part of Windows Server 2019.
Yeah, and I think they kind of put that in the last section here. What is it? Their hybrid. I got to look at it. It's the newer converged hybrid converged infrastructure (HCI).
Had to remember what today's buzzword for the cloud was.
I know.
It's got machine learning and AI.
Yeah. IoT,
There we go.
hashtag. No, but you've got like Azure Backup, Azure File Sync. You can see where they're really pushing for that hybrid environment, which is to be expected. I mean, that's just kind of the lay of the land these days. Security. Now, this one was funny, Dawn. I felt like, where did they? Right here. I remember reading this. To protect, defend, and respond. I feel like this is a superhero anthem or something. I mean, what does the IT superhero costume look like, Dawn?
Protect, detect, and respond.
Yeah.
I don't know. We should design something.
Okay, I'll leave that up to you. But they kind of break it down into these three sections here. Protect. So in Server 2016, you saw shielded VMs for Windows operating systems. Here in 2019, they're promising Linux shielded VMs, amongst other things. So they're starting from that onset and then looking at detect and respond with whatever they called the updated Windows Defender. Let me see if I can find that here. Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, so ATP. So we've seen that before, but just expanding on that a little bit to because they recognize the number of attacks and things that are happening out in the real world these days. So application platform, this is a big one. So looking at their third theme here, this is where that Kubernetes support is, Dawn, that you were mentioning. That's where they kind of clump this and categorize it. Like I said, a lot of focus around developers here, so that's pretty cool. And also having an open mind about things. So with Satya's kind of mentality with Microsoft that we see nowadays, a lot of that feedback was really referencing having that heterogeneous environment and allowing, different platforms to be ran and managed all together, making it easier for the admins. So that's what we see a lot of as well.
And, I'm a Linux guy myself.
Yeah, so
and
look at this,
the
Don.
Windows subsystem for Linux.
Yeah,
They've been rolling out in
WSL.
Windows 10. They're incorporating that into Windows Server 2019 and making that production ready.
Yep.
I find, and I don't know why, but on my computer at home where I still run Windows 10, when I drop to a command prompt, I'll usually go right into the subsystem for Linux because I get things done faster in there. So I've found it to be really reliable.
Well, that's what I mean, and that's really what it is. So if you're an admin that's been working on Linux systems, then you can manage Windows and Linux or whatever. It's about being comfortable, being efficient, not trying to learn PowerShell after you've been in the business for 30 years. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything. I love PowerShell, but, just being more efficient, being a better, more productive admin. And I know you're like looking at the time, Dawn. This is that last, I swear we're almost finished with this. There's only 4 themes here. So this last one, hyper-converged infrastructure. So this idea is where you have your, compute, storage, and networking, where in the past those things were separated out. We see, honestly, it all comes down to getting the biggest bang for your buck here. So if we can be smart with our hardware, smart with our storage, which hardware, also smart with how that networking is handled. So if I have one company that can handle all of this, maybe I'm onto something. And look, you can even see here, they reference money. So you can tell that this is what it's really all about. Just a more efficient way for systems to handle all of that. So, and again, referencing back to the cloud, you also see them referencing that Project Honolulu. They call it by that code name here, but we know it at this point, hopefully, what they're referencing. But I think what their goal is just to try to set themselves up for scalability so that they can evolve and still have a place in this cloud space as well, I'm trying to see if there's anything else. So we said that the Windows System Admin Center is really tailored for 2019, but also take a look at this. Customers using System Center will be excited to know that System Center 2019 is coming and will support Windows Server 2019. So maybe they'll release that at Ignite too, and then I can get all the deets and bring them to you guys. I don't know. I don't have any more to offer. To be honest, I have not played with it. I know Dawn's probably going to be like, what? But no, I don't have the insider preview on my work computer here, and that's usually what I'm on. So that's about it.
Yeah. Well, if you want to check that out, the insider previews are free. You just have to sign up for the Windows Insider program, which is also free. And then you can download and install it. The installs are... they're free, but they're time bombed, right? So when the actual production copy comes out, then your license becomes invalid.
Right.
But if you want to try get a head start on the game, which is a great idea. If you're just learning, it's a great way to learn stuff before it comes out. If you're out there in the enterprise already, it's a great way to test new features to make sure your systems are going to be compatible so that when the new version releases, you are prepared. All right, Cherokee, we did get one other question, which I think is geared a little more towards me, so we'll field it before we wrap up here. But
okay.
The last question we've got is, which ITProTV topics are the most popular? And so this is one that I visit as one of the co-founders of ITProTV. I visit quite a bit to see which of our shows are getting watched. And if you were to look at our top 10 shows,
okay.
it reads like the most popular certifications, right? The CompTIA A+ is typically number 1. CompTIA Security Plus is normally number 2. Sometimes they flip-flop, but it's normally those. But then we've got our Microsoft MCSA for Windows 10 and Windows Server 2016. Those are up there pretty high, as well as the Cisco CCNA and CCNP for routing and switching. Those usually make up our top 10. After that, it becomes a
hodgepodge.
It really does. A lot of our tech skills training, the stuff that isn't certification based, things that are security tools and utilities, networking tools and utilities, things like Wireshark, those all score really highly in our list. But usually it's certification stuff that a lot of people are out there looking to get certifications
so you can make that money.
It helps you get a job, absolutely, yeah. and that's important to a lot of people, as it should be.
And also maintaining that job with those tech skills too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but we have a saying, which is a good IT pro is always learning, and like with Windows Server 2019 coming out, you need to be learning, you need to be staying up to date because Hey, if you
You're gonna get left in the
decided
dust.
Windows 2000 was fine for me,
Kind of depressing when you think about it. Yeah.
yeah, your skills only last a handful of years, and that's what
true.
we normally feel. All right, well, that's about all the time we have for this episode of Asks Me Anything. Cherokee, thank you very much for joining us in studio today.
You're welcome.
And we didn't stump you. You did a great job answering all the questions. So
I'm not crying, so that's a plus.
That usually happens after the camera stop. And so look forward to having you back with us for another Asks Me Anything in the future. For those of you out there in TV land, I absolutely appreciate all the great questions you guys sent in, and keep them coming. Even though this episode is over, you can still post on Twitter using hashtag AsksMeAnything, and we continue to monitor them. We gather them together. We pick the best questions and answer them during the show. And remember, if you're an ITProTV subscriber, make use of our Q&A forum, because those questions do get prioritized. You can check out more of that and even see a free subscription to ITProTV over at our website, ITPro.tv. Odd how that works out. All right, thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next time.